Islam.
It is with great pleasure and honor that I introduce a dynamic speaker who's going to lecture to us and going to inform us concerning the all great Moabite Moorish woman, the science of the number 9, the matriarch of the human family. I'm going to introduce to you without further delay Brother Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, thank you. Islam, Moors.
Islam.
First I want to open up, be casual and comfortable, but I want to bring a point up. In many areas of organization, you'll see us dealing with what we call family problems and social problems, economic problems, political problems, rights issues. Very often people talk the subject matters dealing with the symptoms. Rarely will they go to the cause, the root, because the root commands a change, not only with those that they're complaining about, but also with themselves. So we're going to deal today with the applied science of the number 9, which is one of the most ancient lessons of civilization on the planet Earth. It deals with the matriarchy because that is the foundation of civilization, period, on the planet Earth. There's no such thing as ancient civilization when you talk about patriarchy. It's a fraud. We also know that when people go into so-called Asiatic African history, they will usually go into it with a patriarchal mind. Automatically, the mental is polarized because it's out of harmony with truth and with nature. In other words, like this. If you got a seed and you want to grow some crop, you throw it up in the air and have a balloon or something just hold in the air so it can get some air and it's going to give you some crop, or do you plant it in the earth?
Plant it in the earth.
Plant it in the earth. Why? Because the earth is a womb. And if you want anything to learn, to grow, to gestate, and to come to fruition in the physical form, it must have a womb. That includes the thought, doesn't it? Isn't the thought a seed? Isn't a seed an egg? Isn't the mind a womb? So there's a feminine principle in nature that we've been ignoring, not that we didn't know about it, but because we've been made patriarchal in our mentality to the masculine principle being the superior I, i.e. God, which is a fraud. Men need not be, I would just say, threatened by truth, but they should embrace truth. Recognize, like you can have, if you have daughters and sons, right? Say you got a daughter and she's 13, 14 years old, and you got a son about 17. Mentally, they're about equal. Because women are always faster than men. Why? Because they're the first being here. Because every male has a mother. And every female has herself, her mother. And every egg is female. It's not disputable. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? They're both females. What's your argument? So you must understand nature. If you want to understand nature, you must understand nature and how things are done to understand yourself. And so if you're going to know yourself, you must acknowledge first your origin. Your birthmark, universal, is the navel. Nave implies water and navigation. Il means God. So navigating gods. And so your birthmark is a navel. Universally. It's not a strawberry, it's not a mole on your back with a hair growing out of it. It's a navel. Universal. Principally, all ancient civilizations were matriarchal. Matriarchal means government run primarily by women. Because in our time now, because we're living and we're speaking now, we relate mostly to what we know or what we've been told. And so we've been living under patriarchal systems and have no reference point, simply because books have been burned by the Christians. Literature has been burned. Artifacts have been hidden, and some that were very revealing were dumped in the middle of the ocean so that you couldn't figure this thing out. Then you were jealously protected from outsiders giving you any information. Back to what you were saying. The issue, before we go into some points about woman and using her tools, going back to the principles of our ancient fathers, you must understand the caveats. This is back to even some things that we're discussing, even with the children, babies, the birth certificate, etc. So before we talk about the birth certificates, you must know about what is the instruments that cause them or gives them the ability to make this claim of bond in the first place. So the first thing that you should be aware of is the Christian Black Codes of 1724, correct? You're aware of them, right? The 54 articles, right? Came from the church. You're aware of that, right?
No.
You're not?
New to this.
Well, let's go back a little further. Constantine the Great. Flavius Valerius Constantinus, the Roman ruler, emperor, and the authorizer and the authority of the founding, adoption, proliferation, and the propagation of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed for Roman rulership on the planet Earth. That Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed of Constantine was established over a series of years with the first major council of bishops coming together, 325 AD. Do you have an idea what that date means? 325 AD. Do you know what AD represents?
After Christ.
They tell you that. AD means Anno Domini, after domination.
Oh.
All right.
Anno
Anno Domini. After domination. Well, who were they dominating? But you know, we don't even go there right now. What they tell you is after they lynched the Nazarene and started altering the records. So now the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed was drafted and established in its first form, not complete, 325 years after the Romans assassinated Yeshua ben Yosef, who they transliterated in the text as Jesus, after Zeus, the Roman god. And that name is translated into coarse Anglican language, Jesus, which is not the prophet's name, not the name his mother gave him, not the name he did his work in, not the name he went to the grave in. His name is Yahushua. People who do not understand Hebrew or the language, excuse me just a second, Islam. Now, you know that the average people out here are people, being sincere, think that Yeshua's name is Jesus, right? And they think, and a lot of them know it. All the preachers know it. They learn it when they get their ordination papers. Except most of them are Masons, and they take a blood oath of death not to reveal the secrets because the church will collapse. But they know his name is Yahshua, right? However, they will never confess it publicly because they're trading a few pieces of silver to keep our people enslaved for their Roman masters who ordained them. But they tell the people that God ordained them, implying the Creator God, though the state is their God. Right now, we're going to go back to that when we talk about the marriage license too. That's where their allegiance really are. And so the thing is, the illusion is, most of the people that you trust with your babies, with yourself, with your life, are actually the vampires. This is the darkness. This is the illusion. Because what you think is not. A lot of people you think is your enemy. What you think some of the Europeans are your enemy. Some of them are your friends. Some of the people look like you that you trust is your enemy. So you must understand spirituality to really tell that.
That's right.
Although you may not trust those forms, every European is not your enemy.
Yes, Mom.
It is with great pleasure and honor that I introduce a dynamic speaker who's going to lecture to us and going to inform us concerning the all great Moabite Moorish woman, the science of the number 9, the matriarch of the human family. I'm going to introduce to you without further delay Brother Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, thank you. Islam, Morris.
Islam.
First I want to open up, be casual and comfortable, but I want to bring a point up. In many areas of organization, you'll see us dealing with what we call family problems and social problems, economic problems, political problems, rights issues. Very often people talk to subject matters dealing with the symptoms. Rarely will they go to the cause, the root, because the root commands a change, not only with those that they're complaining about, but also with themselves. So we're going to deal today with the applied science of number 9, which is one of the most ancient lessons of civilization on the planet Earth. It deals with the matriarchy because that is the foundation of civilization, period, on the planet Earth. There's no such thing as ancient civilization when you talk about patriarchy. It's a fraud. We also know that when people go into so-called Asiatic African history, they will usually go into it with a patriarchal mind. Automatically, the mental is polarized because it's out of harmony with truth and with nature. In other words, like this. If you got a seed and you want to grow some crop, you throw it up in the air and have a balloon or something just holding there so it can get some air and it's going to give you some crop, or do you plant it in the earth?
Plant it in the earth.
Plant it in the earth. Why? Because the earth is a womb. And if you want anything to learn, to grow, to gestate, and to come to fruition in the physical form, it must have a womb. That includes the thought, doesn't it? Isn't the thought a seed? Isn't the seed an egg? Isn't the mind a womb? So there's a feminine principle in nature that we've been ignoring, not that we didn't know about it, but because we've been made patriarchal in our mentality to the masculine principle being the superior I, i.e. God, which is a fraud. Men need not be, how would you say, threatened by truth, but they should embrace truth. Recognize, like you can have, if you have daughters and sons, right? Say you got a daughter and she's 13, 14 years old, and you got a son about 17. Mentally, they're about equal. Because women are always faster than men. Why? Because they're the first being here. Because every male has a mother. And every female has herself, her mother. And every egg is female. It's not disputable. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? They're both females. What's your argument? So you must understand nature. If you want to understand nature, you must understand nature and how things are done to understand yourself. And so if you're going to know yourself, you must acknowledge first your origin. Your birthmark, universal, is the navel. Nave implies water and navigation. Il means God. So navigating gods. And so your birthmark is a navel. Universally. It's not a strawberry, it's not a mole on your back with a hair growing out of it. It's a navel. Universal. Principally, all ancient civilizations were matriarchal. Matriarchal means government run primarily by women. Because in our time now, because we're living and we're speaking now, we relate mostly to what we know or what we've been told. And so we've been living under patriarchal systems and have no reference point, simply because books have been burned by the Christians. Literature has been burned. Artifacts have been hidden, and some that were very revealing were dumped in the middle of the ocean so that you couldn't figure this thing out. Then you were jealously protected from outsiders giving you any information. Back to what you were saying. The issue, before we go into some points about woman and using her tools, going back to the principles of our ancient fathers, you must understand the caveats. This is back to even some things that we're discussing, even with the children, babies, the birth certificate, etc. So before we talk about the birth certificates, you must know about what is the instruments that cause them or gives them the ability to make this claim of bond in the first place. So the first thing that you should be aware of is the Christian Black Codes of 1724, correct? You're aware of them, right? The 54 articles, right? Came from the church. You're aware of that, right?
No.
You're not?
New to this.
Well, let's go back a little further. Constantine the Great. Flavius Valerius Constantinus, the Roman ruler, emperor, and the authorizer and the authority of the founding, adoption, proliferation, and the propagation of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed for Roman rulership on the planet Earth. That Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed of Constantine was established over a series of years with the first major council of bishops coming together, 325 AD. Do you have an idea what that date means? 325 AD. Do you know what AD represents?
After Christ.
They tell you that. AD means Anno Domini, after domination.
Ah.
All right.
Anno
Anno Domini. After domination. Well, who were they dominating? But we don't even go there right now. What they tell you is after they lynched the Nazarene and started altering the records. So now the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed was drafted and established in its first form, not complete, 325 years after the Romans assassinated Yeshua ben Yosef, who they transliterated in the text as Jesus, after Zeus, the Roman god. And that name is translated into coarse Anglican language, Jesus, which is not the prophet's name, not the name his mother gave him, not the name he did his work in, not the name he went to the grave in. His name is Yahushua. People who do not understand Hebrew or the language, excuse me for a second, Islam. Now, you know that the average people out here are people being sincere, think that Yeshua's name is Jesus, right? And they think, and a lot of them know it. All the preachers know it because they learn it when they get their ordination papers. Except most of them are Masons, and they take a blood oath of death not to reveal the secrets because the church will collapse. But they know his name is Yahshua, right? However, they will never confess it publicly because they're trading a few pieces of silver to keep our people enslaved for their Roman masters who ordained them. But they tell the people that God ordained them, implying the Creator God, though the state is their God. Right, now we're going to go back to that when we talk about the marriage license too. That's where their allegiance really are. And so the thing is, the illusion is, most of the people that you trust with your babies, with yourself, with your life, are actually the vampires. This is the darkness. This is the illusion. Because what you think is not. A lot of people you think is your enemy, what you think some of the Europeans are your enemy, some of them are your friends. Some of the people look like you that you trust is your enemy. So you must understand spirituality to really tell that.
That's right.
Although you may not trust those forms, every European is not your enemy. Adam is Aton, Eve is evolution. And Allah is woman herself, you. God of the planet. Now that's the truth. Now, though people can't handle that, it's only politically they can't handle that. But nature doesn't have any mercy on your ignorance. I bet you can't show me a man that's on this planet, include somebody called Adam, that don't have a belly button. So there's no debate. And he got 2 buttons up here that don't work. Ain't fed nothing. But they're there to remind him of his origin. And that does not lie, does it?
No.
Does it? However, believers will lie and say that's not so. You've never seen a man exist on this planet that got a chest that's totally smooth. He got inactive glands there. Don't feed, nothing. So you're going to talk about a God you can't see and don't recognize the brothers and sisters you see every day? Then you're a liar. And there's a price to pay for that. It's not because I said so or anyone else says so, because nature says so. And you mess with her, you got it coming. Because she doesn't play. And you can call her Allah, Yahweh, Jehovah, Parabrahms. Guess what? It's still all feminine. Messiah. Yeah, she come back even if she sends a son. It's still her. So you got to really understand how this thing works. It may be uncomfortable because of what you thought you knew based on what somebody told you belief-wise. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you look at little sister there, right? This is fine. Look at little sister there. Right now, she has a nation right inside of her right now. She comes here with eggs already in her. And they're all female. Every last one of them. Male eggs do not exist in nature. Fact. See that throne? You see this throne? That's an egg. You see those signs around that throne? Around her crown? That's the 12 disciples, or the 12 signs, 12 constellations. See that crescent of the star? Is that 9 and that 13? 9 is the 9 cosmic months of man's birth. 13 is the cycle of the moon around the earth, while the earth revolves around the sun. And she cycles 13 times to bring a form here. Whether she brings it or not at the same time, that's the height of her spiritual connection to the cosmos. But religionists will call her dirty, to steal her power. If she knows herself, she knows that's when she's most spiritual. But whatever her state of mind is, so is the atmosphere out here, whether she brings a physical form or not. So therefore, if she's out of order, we're out of order. And we can't get in order until she's in order. Not that we can't make the effort. Don't misunderstand me. It's not an issue of not taking responsibility. It's an issue of understanding who God really is. God is a generic term. But when we talk about the Supreme, or the Allah, Allah is a feminine name. However, truth makes people uncomfortable because we have been steeped into a patriarchal system by the popes of Rome. All right? Now, the popes of Rome, you have what is known in the Roman emperor's table, the Franciscan Brotherhood. And it's a body or groups, just like you say think tanks, of Roman bishops, cardinals, etc. Whether you want to call them the Jesuits or others, irrespective. Their mission is to conquer the world. They murdered all the prophets. The blood of the prophets are on their hands. But they finally got you. Finally got you. They know that there's no way that they can rule the world without your cooperation. This is why it was very important that when they finally colonized the Maghrib, Marrakesh, that you call America, that's Maghrib el-Aqsa. Maghrib el-Aqsa is Morocco, the extreme west. And so they told you that it's over there. And you believed them. And you disconnected from the land. And they claimed it. Are you seeing what's happening? To preserve the energies and the resources for themselves, they needed to claim the greatest resource here. So the general concept that they would give you in education is that the resources is gold and silver and all this commerce, right? They know that the greatest resource is the people. And so the state, corporations, India Company, Pacific, Africa Company, were all called companies until 1800s. This was late. This wasn't earlier, as they imply to you. It wasn't until really early into the mid-1800s that they start calling these corporations states. And then start claiming the lands, as you were talking about earlier. And so the people start thinking that the state is the land. States are private, imitation, artificial, corporate entities. Fictions on paper. So they could claim your child is important, that if the dragon is waiting for that child to be born before they can devour it, if you're in your right mind, you can take them out of here. Do you understand? But if you're in your warped mind, all the dragon needs to do is wait for the child to be born, and then you deliver it. And then they devour the child. And then they file a bond on that child that they gave birth to that child. And so they would list that child as a corporate entity that exists by virtue of sanction from the state. So the certificate of that institution would be birth certificate, state of New Jersey, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, etc. And the being would be listed in all capital letters, which means a corporate entity, and would be filed as such. And they would sign their name to that chattel. Therefore, they would have first authority or jurisdiction over the being. So the being would have a Roman name. Remember this, Roman means European nations collectively as one. Does not mean the city in Italy. Romans means the Albion or the Gaelic, Gothic, Frankish part of the human family. The Franks. Do you understand? Whether you're saying German, French, English, etc. All of those are contemporary, political, tribal, designated jurisdictions of the extensions of the same people. Do you understand? It's a tribe of Albions who we placed there that broke up into political families, formed for themselves political families. Do you hear me? So don't get caught up in the fiction of thinking that a German and a Frenchman is different in the concept that you thought it was. The mission is still one. So ultimately, while they may have political arguments or political differences, ultimately everyone operates for the empire. Now do you understand colonialism? And why when they colonized Maghrib, they all agreed to oath to claim white party status. Because they could not be free white persons. Are you following me? They were not free white persons or called white persons until mid-1800s. So when you see documents that refer to Europeans as white people prior to 1800, it's fraud. It's a lie. It's made retroactive. No different than when you see these Moors referred to as black or Negro people made retroactive in history. It is a fraud that goes past early 1800s. Absolute fraud. Are you following me? For the Romans to rule in the Maghreb, they needed a code of rules of law because all of the Moors did not succumb or convert. Some of them fought, went into the mountains. Some of them went into the swamps. The Europeans start calling them different tribal names that are usually corruptions of ancient Algonquian names, like Cherokee, Blackfoot, Seminole, Nanaco, etc. They're all tribes of Moors. Now, for your information, so that we can clear this up, and this is another point too that I want to make, and brother, this is another point that I know your book is done. However, it might be good for you, since it's not totally published yet, that you might use this in a certain part because of your, your degrees that you got in what they call Indian studies. How did the Moors become called in North America Indians? Is it generally known amongst you? If anyone knows, raise your hand. Let me tell you. See this tassel here? Now mine's a little red, but it's originally black, and I've had a lot of these. Every time I buy one, they turn red. I don't know why. They do. All my tassels turn red, so I just stopped changing them. But the dye that is used to dye these tassels is called indigo. And it's from a berry that's found strictly in Morocco. Are you following me? Yeah. Also, you ever heard, like when they talk about a lot of the Moors, like in the islands and in the south areas of Mexico, and they talk about some parts of our ancient religious rituals, and they call it voodoo? Yeah. You know where it come from? Do you know where it come from? That's a miscorruption of a word. Hindu. Do you know where that comes from? It comes from Hindi. You know where that comes from? That comes from a place called Perot. Do you know geographically where Perot is? Perot is just below Tianyi, that you call China. It's not China, it's Tianyi. Perot is just below Tianyi, and you know it today as India. India is not India, and those people are not Indians. They are Moabite and Hittites. Moabite and Hittites. Three major dynasties made up that astrological Sanskrit powerful culture that you know in Perot and Tibet, etc. area. Those dynasties are, and take your time so you can write this down, the Mauryan dynasty, the Nanda dynasty, and the Gupta dynasty. All of those dynasties are ancient Moabite Moorish dynasties. And it is the Moors who named Peru Hindustan. And this is where the name for Peru become Hindustan. And that's a few thousand years ago. Now, Hindustan, due to corruption in European sociology, as Europeans have been conquering Asia and Africa, called them Hindis and Hindus, where the name Indian came from, which is a fiction. And if you think that what I just said to you is untrue, talk to a Hindustani on the line that I just talked to you and watch them confirm it. And some be surprised that you knew. How did you find out? Also, you got to remember that the Moors controlled the spice trade, the gold, etc., 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 because the Moors governed the planet, ruled the 7 continents and the 7 seas. Now, we're going to cut part of the history and just go to certain points that are you're familiar with, so that you can relate to what I'm saying. You know the story of Columbus? They tell you about Columbus sailed the ocean, blew the old deal. And after they defeated the Moors in 1492, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand merged their kingdoms and funded his voyage to the west. Well, the voyage to the west, pay attention to that, the voyage to the west is the voyage to the Maghreb. When you study European history, you study from the Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France, back to the Crusades, back to the Punic Wars, etc., which is a series of the same wars, actually. For the most part, you think of what you call medieval history and late European history, because the Europeans used that year, 1492, as the pivotal year, or as the axis year, to distinguish ancient and modern history. Why? Because 1492 is the political year that is recognized as the final of the Moors, even though they weren't totally collapsed. That's the general year they used to recognize the fall of the ancient empires. And now, what they call European beginnings, when Christendom began to dominate the world. It was not till the Moors fell that the rest of the Asiatic nations fell. They had no chance, because it's the Moors who are also referred to as Turks. So don't get confused, think that Turkey and Moors is different people. When the Christians refer us to as the Moors and Turks, keeping them in check, they're all Moors. They just did that to divide you so that you couldn't trace your history down. Charles the Hammer, his name is Charles Martel, M-A-R-T-E-L. That's European history. So you're going to go to European history also to get your history. Because understand, when you're dealing with Moorish history, you're dealing with world history. You're not dealing with the fiction of what they call black history restricted to some slave period in North America. Black history is strictly slave history, strictly. When you're talking about civilization, you go to the Moors, because those are our forefathers before enslavement. That's when we ruled. Our people will talk about kings and queens, but they'll never go to the history in the right frame of mind. They will take the black and then retroactively attach it to the civilized world. It doesn't attach. It's two different statuses. When you say black to the civilized world, they know that those are slave products. People who are the products of chattel operations. Has nothing to do with sovereignty. Has nothing to do with authority. Has nothing to do with self-rule, self-governance. it indicates a person denationalized, a person who is outside of the human family, a person who has no standing at law, a person who's not considered organic, but considered corporate, even though it lives. Do you understand that? So politically, when you see those terms used or written, that's what it means, not what you may assume that it means. So you must seriously understand why the issue is important, even when they list that thing on documents, including that birth certificate. Because they cannot list the person, and remember, keep this in mind too, because it's important for you to know this. There's two types of person at law. Write that down. If you forget this, you're in trouble. If you forget this, you're in trouble. Two types of person at law. When you see, read, or hear from any legal perspective or process in government or history that says person, unless it says natural person, it means corporation or artificial person. Are we clear? This is important so that you know how to deal with documentation received and given. Are we clear? Because I don't want anyone to get past this.
Can you repeat that again?
There are two types of person at law. The word person, when given to you in legal jargon or in written form or documentation or in operations of government, it means automatically, in most instances, a corporation. You don't know that, not that you couldn't know it, because it's not taught to people. Because the U.S. corporation is a slave state, and they have a language to fit it. This is so that slaves don't rebel, because they don't know what's going on. No different than the average person didn't know that the birth certificate and the marriage certificates are bonds against them. You see what I'm saying to you? So just like you didn't know that, you also may not have known that the language that was given to you was designed for you to agree orally to your chattel enslavement through legal processes. Do you see what I'm saying? And when they give you documentations or present an instrument to you for you to sign and to agree, they represent it as something else when it's actually a bond for the world stock market. Do you understand? Now, if they list your baby in the corporate status, they're not violating international law, are they? Technically. So basically that creates what is known legally a straw, or a man of straw. So you write that down, man of straw. And you're going to look this up in your law dictionary and your unabridged dictionaries and cross-reference it in other unabridged dictionaries. So you got to know how you got where you are so you know how to get out of it, or how to deal with it. All right? Are you following me? And if you don't understand, don't hesitate to say, because I want to make sure when you leave here you have some working information, not just hearing me run my big mouth. So do you understand that there's two types of person? What is the organic person?
The natural person.
What is the corporate person? Person. So when they say a person must, and you think it means you, then they trick you and you sign a contract, now you're bond. Now the law becomes the violation of the contract, and you thought it was the law. No, they're suing you for breach of contract.
I understood what you just said. Person means automatically corporation, unless it specifies natural person.
Yes.
I got lost dealing with man of straw. As far as I
Man of
understood
straw
about the
is
child.
the fiction that they create to place the debt against. In other words, like what she was talking about earlier, you know, when her husband made an affidavit, and he has not yet filed it, but he made an affidavit, but they did accept the corporate state. What corporate state is that filing under? Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, what?
have no idea. Because he just started to file the paperwork.
All right, well, don't file them yet. Not if it's theirs. You're going to have to make your own. We'll get back to you later and tell you some things. Not right now. But if you got that certificate from them,
Yes.
they got a bond on you. They got a bond on you. Yes, they do. So even if you did some other things, they got a bond on you. See, what you must not do, this is why, again, certain things must be taught to our people to bring them back into governmental principles so that you understand certain responsibilities from a civil matter, or certain civil matters already reside with you. But because our people have been held out of government so long, for so many generations, and then overseers were placed amongst our people to convince them that the 14th Amendment Negro stock was a reality, and that civil rights that went with it was a reality. That's fictional. That comes from the Christian Black Codes of 1724. To solidify the corporate person for the states, their agents. You ever notice that when certain agents say to you, by the power vested in me by the state of New Jersey, I pronounce you man and wife? They're state agents. But they tell the people that they were ordained by the Creator, didn't they? And that there's a separation of church and state, didn't they? But the average person, because they deal with beliefs, not facts, never even notice it, do they? They got the mentality of boys and girls. Now you see why civilized people call them boys and girls? And when they do that, then they get mad, they want to burn things, don't they? But they are boys and girls. That's why they call it minority. Most people think that minority means numbers, don't they? It means mental state. Legally, it means mental state. And so you have grown men and women transacting business in alien names and talk about their own things. See the problem? They don't even own their own offspring, who've been bonded away. So they think bondage is a chain. Bondage is that document. They're bonds. They're flesh bonds. See, so this enslavement for the colonists was bureaucratized, and they formulated corporations to deal with their stock investments. That's what the 14th Amendment person is. That's why as soon as you agree that you're Negro, black, and colored, you come under certain codes and you don't know what's happening to you, but that's what happens to you. An ignorant person calls it prejudice. A person who knows law calls it birthright theft. Because that's what it is. And you always have the right to do what? To reclaim the honor of your mothers and your fathers. But if you don't want to honor your mothers and fathers, that's your right too, isn't it? Huh? So if you've been transacting business in alien names, and then you go vote in them names and they tear up the vote because it ain't going the way they want to, should you be upset? An intelligent person wouldn't. But an ignorant person would be upset because they think that that vote belongs to them, don't they? Huh? So if the dog comes around filing elephant votes, and then somebody comes along, the elephants, tear up the votes because they ain't going the way they want to, and then the dogs call the elephants prejudice. Who's at the lunch?
Dogs.
Oh, all right. So you got all these Asiatic Africans saying they Smith, Jones, Johnson, and Frankenstein, and they talk about freedom. It's an oxymoron. That don't go together. We talk about legal. We're not talking about their emotions. Are you seeing? So any documents that are filed on behalf of such persons automatically becomes under wardship of the state corporation. And that entity is treated as corporate property. It's called chattel. Isn't that simple breakdown? It's not complicated, is it? Is it? And once you understand it, you can understand your own concept that how you should start thinking on how to undo it. It's not complicated, is it? But if you don't look at it for what it actually is, it seems daunting. It may appear complicated when it's really not. It's just being yourself. It's because you can't transact business claiming to be someone else and not commit a fraud on your own part. And if you commit a fraud on your own part, you can't turn around and charge somebody else with a fraud and then sue them for it. You see the difficulty that so-called black people have getting reparations? I said so-called black people. Because it can't happen, because no such people exist on the planet Earth. If there's anybody on the planet Earth designated Negro, black, and colored, it is already filed on the records of civilization as property of European families who colonized North America. And if you trace them, you can find a European name that they themselves will write and say it's them. So can that being turn around, come before a free court, before the civilized world, and command freedoms or the rights of international law for that security of that being? Cannot happen. Now you understand the Dred Scott case? Plaintiff in error. And scholars keep talking racism when that is not really the issue. It's a diversion. Plaintiff is in error, claiming to be Scots and Englishmen or Welshmen. So you got an Asiatic claiming to be Englishman, but talking about he's free from the Englishmen. You cannot dishonor your mothers and your fathers and then claim freedom, because your inheritance is in the mother and the father's names of your forefathers. And that's where the nations of the planet Earth put their trust. And so if there's any bond of honor or any covenant of honor, and you transact business in an alien name, don't talk about law, don't talk about justice, because the position is no judicio standi, no standing at law. Of course, out of ignorance, we would call it racism. Because we've been taught that, because they don't want you to figure out what really it is so you don't fix it. So even the one doing it to you will promote racism. You see the point? It's to their economic advantage. Do you see? And so when we're speaking with people on these issues, because they may give what appears to be a reasonable conversation, we can get fooled into thinking that they're trying to work something out. It is no problem at all, because math is one all over the planet. 1 and 1 is what?
2.
2 and 2 is what?
4.
Uno. Dos. It doesn't matter. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't change. Because truth don't change or pass away. Beliefs come and go. Because they're not founded in truths. They're founded in emotion. So there's instability there, isn't it? And the root word in belief is lie. Do you understand? So when you deal with science and proper instruction, it has always been from ancient times to present that you begin with belief, because that's the state of mind of a child. It is not wrong. It's called evolution and development. And when you give a child something to look at, the child, because it has senses, sight, taste, smell, touching, and hearing, which are all sights. Collectively, it is a common sight that is called common sense, the highest science known to man. That science is used to gather information and to do what? Correlate that information into realities and confirmations. When you're in the first stages of development, it is not as sharp, although it is more pure. Not as sharp. So distinctions are less apt to be of issue. The child then just gathers. Just right now it's gathering. You see? And so because of that state of mind, we call it a minor. You following me? But the rules don't change. The truth don't change or pass away. When the child gets a little older, then it comes from belief to faith. And remember, this is a trinity of steps. Triune principle. And faith is when it has a little bit of understanding of what the child believed. It can discern and distinguish certain things, although not yet mastered. Then the last step is fruition. And fruition is when the being and the truth becomes one. Then the child is a man or woman and no longer needs the childish things, and he puts them away. Doesn't cast them in the dirt. It's just saved for the next children. So a grown being is not supposed to be a believer of anything. However, if you tell people that right out, they'll think that you're attacking Allah, that you're attacking the prophets, that you have no respect for divine order. But it's only said out of ignorance. Then you understand the condition of the world, why it's in the condition it's in. But it's that way because those who have been ruling taught them that, to rob them, because they're money changers. You get the point? Because they're stealing your birthright. So therefore, the baby, right now, you're what she knows. And her daddy is what she knows. There's, she's starting to explore a little bit, but you're the center of her universe right now, right? And then when she gets 1.5, she's going to start testing the waters a little bit. And she gets 2, and she gets pretty confident, because they're very sharp, right? Then they're going to start looking for little exercises of independence. Though they're not going to be independent for quite some while, they will start exercising. These are cycles, right? And so when the child's not sure, she's going to be holding on to stuff when she's trying to walk. And while she's going to take a couple steps, bump her head a little bit, That's why she's going to get confident, and she'll start looking at longer distance and start getting herself together and run across the room, grab something, oh, got this. After a while, you're going to be telling her to sit down. Right? And after a while, she's not going to think about walking, she's just going to get up and walk. Then she's going to be running. It ain't no big thing. Same thing with knowledge. It's evolutionary process. That's Eve. You see? So knowledge of the atmosphere, the knowledge of the planet, the knowledge of the energies, knowledge of the elements, and how they function together in relationship to your body, to yourself, and a knowledge of the chemical compound makeup of all of those energy that you call body salts, etc. That's religion, the study of that. And your relationship to the divine order. And everything else they've been giving people thereafter is a lie. That's why everybody's hating each other and shedding each other's blood for their idol gods that somebody gave them. Do you understand? Because every other living thing is your brother and sister. If you understand this thing properly. And then there is no debate. Not because you believe anything, because you stop being a little child. And someone doesn't come to you and say, well, sis, can you say your ABCs? And you go, let me see. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then you start getting a rhythm with it because you got it now, right? Well, I expect that of the baby when she's, 2, 3. But not of you. I want to see some sentences from you. You see the point? So when you're a child, you say, I think that God loves me. And they said, yes, Jesus loves you and Allah loves you and stuff like that. But when you're grown and someone's still playing that game with you, they're a charlatan and you're a dunce. However, most people don't recognize that because most honest people won't tell them to their face they're a dunce. Because if you're grown and still got to be convinced about a divine order or a love, then you're definitely not qualified to operate in a civilized world. Somebody need to have you on a leash. Of course, when they do that, we get insulted, don't we? You get the point? Huh? Do you see why certain people, when they travel the world, there's certain people that just run around all free, and a certain group of people, particularly, if they're going to other people's country, they're usually on some boat tour, and they don't let them go too far from the shore or some little hotel. And they get insulted and called racism, don't they? But everybody in the civilized world knows that those such persons do not honor their mothers and fathers. And since they don't, you know they're dangerous to you. Because they'll sell you out for a few pieces of silver. Do you understand? That's how the civilized world see these people. They don't talk to them because we like to burn and fight. And we get hostile very quickly. And so they won't tell you these things. They'll just come here and make economic progress like every other civilized being while we keep on talking about our beliefs and how saved we are, while our babies are dying, our families are falling apart. But we're saved. We're hypocrites. Back to point. The Franciscan Brotherhood, when they overthrew the empire, the Maghrib, they needed a rule of law in order to govern the defeated people, which is why they took the children from the mothers, because the mothers carried the principles of civilization as well as the wealth. Are we clear? Why do you see the tradition of women in the Asiatic and African countries always wearing bands of gold around the neck, around their arms, the jewelry, even in their turbans and their fezzes, etc., the jewelry? Because the wealth of the family was maintained by the women. Why? Matriarchy. Are we understanding this? Are we clear? We clear? If you go into history and are not aware of that, that does not mean that in this mental state that we're in now that we can go through those principles, because we're corrupted. But if you go into history and not know that, you're going to go into history with a wrong frame of mind, wrong frame of reference. Are you clear? The Franciscan Brotherhood established the Christian Black Codes of 1724 to govern the defeated Moors, who are branded Negroes, Blacks, and Colored, came directly from the church. That was adopted from William Lynch, the master Christian slaveholder from the Atlantis Islands that you call Dominica, Puerto Rico, that area, Haiti, that area. That's the Atlantis Islands. And he came up and he spoke to the Christian slaveholders here in North America on how to institute the psychic attacks of their Roman forefathers in order to put these people in check so they could perpetrate this for hundreds of years rather than having to keep fighting them and guarding them with guns and lynching them because they was losing property. So they had to figure out a way for them to become zombie-like and to perpetuate this mentality themselves. So it was important to Christianize them. This is why our people go to church every Sunday. It's in the Black Codes. I don't have them here, and I don't want that to be the subject matter, but I'll show you the direct article. And all these Asiatics should be aware of what governs them, shouldn't they? Don't they always tell you they know Jesus? Don't they always tell you they know God? They know Allah? They know Moses? Don't they always tell you that? Don't they fill these houses every weekend and contribute to the tunes of millions of dollars? They don't even know the rules that govern them. Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? So logically, they wouldn't know that that birth certificate and that marriage certificates are bonds because they don't deal with those matters because their beliefs don't support it. Doesn't change the reality, does it? Because a person's in denial, does that change reality? Does reality change because a person don't want to deal with reality? Huh? So, if these Asiatics here are all bonded and thereby have no rights, and then accuse the rest of the civilized world of prejudice because their absence of rights, and don't recognize that their birthright has been stolen, is the rest of the world responsible to their ignorance when the birthright is founded in the honor of their own mothers and fathers and recognized by the world only thereby? Are you following me? If you were a European slaveholder, Dutch master, and you've got these Asiatics in chattel bondage, and after 5, 6, 7 generations, they're still transacting business in your family names, would you not file a bond against them? Would you be wrong to?
Makes sense.
Should anything that you buy or sell with the mark or the number of their name be bonded to their corporation and not to anything to your benefit? Is that unjust? If you got a body of people who are not called by their father's names, that keep transacting business in somebody else's name, that keep arguing about what's unfair and what's right and what's wrong, and the world ignores them, is the world wrong? However, they usually think that the world's wrong, don't they? But it's a lack of knowledge, not a lack of really trying, because they do a lot of things to try to fix this thing. They got all kinds of organizations to try to fix this thing. They just can't figure out why they can't do it. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
And when they go into the ancient culture, they'll go into it with a papal mind, the Franciscan Brotherhood's mentality, instead of the mentality of their forefathers. Back into the egg. Look back into the hole from which they were dug. Turn your hearts back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers if you want to be rescued. Ain't nobody gonna come here with no mystery thing and fix nothing. The truth is gonna set you free, and nothing else. And if you don't want to deal with it, you got a right to be enslaved. And the rest of the world got a right to live off your birthright, so don't feel as though you've been and are being mistreated. Because if you don't honor your mothers and your fathers, and the law comes from your mothers and your fathers, and you keep saying it belongs to him, hey, guess what? That's an agreement, isn't it? And that agreement, if you declared out your mouth that the constitutional principles of civilization belong to the Europeans, you waived your rights. And if he claims it, which he's doing anyway, if I'm outside and I'm saying, man, I ain't into all this stuff, man, and I start, this stuff is way in my pockets down, and I start throwing it down, what, people ain't supposed to walk past and pick it up?
Okay.
So if people willing to give up their birthright for a little welfare check or something else, why should they be mad? They sell their birthright for a bowl of red pottage. Because that's what these people did. But they blame the rest of the world, don't they? Because they dishonor their mothers and their fathers. They claim that the Nazarene is a Roman. They put him on the walls as a Roman, knowing he had hair like lamb's wool, skin like burned grass, just like that. They're the hypocrites. They're the liars. But they accuse the civilized world of mistreating them. That's us, don't we? And when everybody feels sorry for us, don't we? Huh? Well, guess what ain't gonna happen? However, to understand that is to understand why Noble Ali set up the old Canaanite temple to nationalize the people. You understand the process. You understand why it was done. Meaning, it's not in a vacuum. It's a countermeasure to Roman activity in the Western Hemisphere. If the history is presented to you, nationalization makes sense. If nationalization is presented to you without a knowledge of law and history, it can, but doesn't necessarily come to you to be reasonable, for you to really understand why it was done. It must be taken out of the belief stage into the knowledge stage. So giving you the root cause and dismiss the symptoms, not that you dismiss them, but to explain them for what they are. And recognize if you fix the root, you ain't got to worry about the poison ivy riding up and down your house all the time. Stop picking the leaves off because it's going to grow back. Get the root. And so if you don't fix the root of the problem, I mean if you don't reclaim your birthright,